Welcome to the 45th Annual Philadelphia Museum of Art Craft Show. Today we are going to be visiting the studio of fiber artist Amy Gillespie, who lives and works in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Amy will be in person at the show, so hopefully you'll all get a chance to meet and talk to her, see her work, and hopefully buy something. Just a little bit of background about Amy. She has a Bachelor of Fine Arts in Fashion Design and Fiber from the Massachusetts College of Art and graduated in 1989 and has been making a living as a fiber artist ever since. She is someone who has dabbled in every kind of fiber experience, it seems, including weaving, surface design like chicorée and batik, knitting, and of course, felting. And she's also an expert seamstress. So Amy, my first question to you is why felt? What attracted you to it? And how did you decide to work in it the way in which you are working in it?
Hi, Linda. Thanks for interviewing me today. And yeah, why felt? When I was in art school, there was no felt making. It was not one of the media that's offered in the fiber department. I know that that's not true now because felting has become very popular. And ironically, it is the oldest fiber medium. People were making felt as the very first fabric thousands of years ago, and they were actually using urine to help stimulate the felting process, if you can believe that. Today, we use soap to change the pH of the wool to help it felt together. So that's an improvement, I think. So I first saw felt making while I was doing art fairs. I used to work with velvet. I used to emboss it with different metal pieces, and I was doing a lot of sewing. So it was more my fashion design background. And I started seeing a couple of other artists. One in particular, Miriam Carter, was doing hats out of felt that she was making. And then another artist, Michelle Friedman, who's doing the show, she was doing felt in jewelry. And the colors were they just spoke to me because I've always been a color person. And I said, I'm going to teach myself how to make felt. And that's what I did. And I really didn't know what I was doing. There was no YouTube at that point. It's about 20 years ago. And I just started experimenting. And my experiments have led to the work that I'm doing now, which is unusual in my process. I kind of make the felt, deconstruct the felt, and then reconstruct it into my artwork. I knew I wanted to do one of a kind work, not production. And so this work perfectly suits me. It kind of harkens back to when I was painting. My work is painterly, yet it feeds my my craft soul of building and making and using my hands, because I kind of think here and somehow it magically comes out here.
So when I look at your work, I realize that you do a lot of preparation work in advance, and it reminds me of this cooking term called mise en place, where you have to get together all of your ingredients, weigh them, measure them, lay them all out before you begin to actually create your masterpiece, whether it's a piece of food or a piece of art. And that seems to be what you do. And it seems that you also you take charge of each step of the process. So maybe you could walk us through your mise en place, and then when you complete your mise en place, then you can show us how you put together all these parts to make a very beautiful masterly piece.
Okay, yes. Well, thank you. And you are 100% right. It requires a little bit of, you really have to conceptualize. For me, it's typically in my mind what I intend to do. Right now, I'm working on a series of marsh scenes. I live here on the Cape, constantly walking the marshes and photographing lovely scenes like this. So I try to keep them somewhat abstract, because my medium, I can get detail, but I can't get super detail. So my pieces are more about blocks of color that lead the eye to perceive a landscape, for instance. So with this piece, I know that I'm going to need in my palette, I'm going to need like greens and kind of all these beachy colors. I'm going to need blue. I'm going to need a dark horizon line, and then I'm going to need sky. So right now, I am currently starting to lay out a variety of greens. I'm going to bring the camera a little bit closer. So when I make a piece of felt, this is a wet felting process. This is what the wool that I use looks like. It looks like, it almost looks like cotton candy. This has been dyed. I haven't dyed this. I used to do a lot of the dyeing. It's a very, you need a lot of ventilation for dyeing. I now buy most of my wool from Yorkshire, England. There's a great company there called, oh, I'm blanking. Anyway, I get all of my wool from England, and it comes in a variety of different colors. And the way that I use them is I can mix them, not unlike paints where you have a tube of green and a tube of blue and you mix it and you get various hues. So what I would do is I just pull these pieces apart like this, and you kind of layer them. And once you have enough of different tones layered, which I will kind of show you. And I know that I'm going to need some lighter tones because this will all show up in the finished piece, because it will almost read as highlights in the felt, because what I'm going to be doing is cutting this. I'm going to be cutting the wool into strips. And in the strip, there would be in the middle, like little sections of this kind of color and little sections of this kind of color. So then when I'm layering them into the work, you'll see the whole variety of tones that are involved. But I will continue to show you just the basic felt making. Let's imagine I've laid out this whole piece, because that's what I would do. I would fill this whole area. I use a screen, put the screen down. I come over to my sink and I use hot water, which this is not, but eventually it would get hot. So let's imagine it was hot. And I pour the water on. And I use my soap. And the soap just changes the pH enough to help all the little fibers grab together. There's little hooks on each piece of fiber in wool. And add more water until this is pretty saturated. And what this does, I'm sort of like matting it together. And I massage it. So then that's the starting point with the wool. I didn't quite lay this out as well as I should have. From here, it's a matter of gently starting to work it. This mat has ridges, and it's the agitation that actually makes the felt come together. This is a long process. It takes me about a half an hour to get from fluff to a piece of felt.
Can you hold up a piece of the finished felt then?
So this is a piece of white and pink felt. I actually did not have any green felt that I've made yet, which is why I need to make some. So let's move on from this part of the process. I then take acrylic gel medium, which is basically an additive for paint. And it changes the viscosity of the paint. And I use a knife. This is just an old vintage knife that I have here. And I add paint to it. And I would, like in this case, I have a little piece of green felt here, actually. Mix it up. and I apply it to the felt. And I let this side dry. Then I flip it over and I do the other side. And that's why it looks like this in the end. It looks like a piece of leather.
It stiffens.
That's what I was saying, like people, you know, the felt is gorgeous after I make it with all the different undulating tones of color. And then I kind of ruin it. But then when I cut it, I'm going to show you, like, it's hard to see on the screen. Like there's all these variations of color in each piece. So the felt is in there in the middle. Yes. So when I say the felt is sandwiched by paint, it is indeed sandwiched by paint. And then you'll see that when the pieces are combined, for instance here, many pieces come together, then you get the pattern. So there's a lot of felt, and what I try to do is make each piece quite bold so that when they come together, you really see them. Do you know what I mean? Like my work can be subtle. Subtlety doesn't really work. You need to be bold in order for when the pieces to come together that they read as a pattern. With the spirals, I just have lovely days of rolling strips, and I just kind of listen to NPR, and I roll each one individually, and I use a bit of gel medium on the back, and I tape it, and I wait till they dry. So for instance, doing this piece is on my table right now. This is the sky for a meadow scene, a marsh scene. So I've decided to go with the spiral sky because I just have really been into doing the spirals lately. And so there will be a dark piece here, and then I need some greens to help with the grasses. I will kind of lay them on a piece of glass and kind of cement them together with medium and cut them. So I get like this kind of, you know, imagine this piece stuck in here. It kind of gives you the vibe of grasses. So it's all very abstracted, but it all works in the end, you know, like.
So when you put together one of your pieces, do you sketch anything out in advance, or it's all in your head, free form?
Not always. Sometimes I'll draw right onto the back of the wood. So there's, this is a piece, a frame that I've made. This is quarter sawn oak that I've dyed kind of a, it's like a lovely kind of chestnutty brown color. I will draw right on this so that the perspective is correct, because this is probably going to be a landscape. This one, I'm not sure what it's going to be. And then in order, when I actually make the pieces, I will sit down at my table and gel medium. I'll put some gel medium on. I kind of put it into place.
So is that your glue, basically?
It's my glue, yeah, because the nice thing about this is that acrylic paint is like a plastic, so it has a plasticity when it dries, so it will expand and contract with the wood. So you never have to worry about my pieces coming apart, because, you know, glue over the years can become brittle and fail. Mm-hmm. This is like a painting. A painting doesn't fail. So yeah. This is basically, my work is almost like fiber embedded into acrylic paint. So I was trying to make it look like the felt goes very deep into the work. And I do that by just contouring the ends. And I get a lot of paint all over my hands. I'm like a little kid that way. And I start building the composition. And at this point, you know, I would be referencing the photo that I showed you to kind of
Mhm.
see, okay, well, there's a bit of blue there, and then I'm gonna taper this one down to kind of give it a little bit more depth. And then I just build the pieces this way. So I do the sky, I always do the skies upside down, so I'm not thinking sky, and then I turn it over to actually do the landscape portion. So then another way I approach pieces is I also do some needle felting, which I also taught myself how to do. And am I doing it 100% correct? I don't know. It doesn't matter because I think it's kind of cool how it's coming out. I wanted to do a warbler because I've seen warblers in my bird feeder lately. So I first did this one. I think we can agree that you've never seen a warbler this size. So
No,
this
but
warbler
great.
is, I'm going to send this to my niece for her bedroom wall, but I did needle felt this and then I wet felted it. So again, I don't think that other people are doing this. For needle felting, it's a whole different ball of wax. You use a base piece of wool and then you slowly build up your shape and you use something like this, lots of these needles, and you just keep stabbing it until it bonds. So with the bird, I would then, you know, I just kept building. I started with the belly, this kind of light blue, and then I added the black, and I did the different shading, and then I wet felted it, which was what I showed you before, where I took it and then I kind of really agitated it, and it kind of softened the whole thing in terms of, you know, it kept it like took all those fine lines and kind of softened them, and I feel like it's pretty realistic looking. I actually did do a warbler. This one will be at the show. That's an actual good warbler size. And I decided to embed this one within coils as if it were, you know, resting amongst something, nuts, acorns. So that's how I also do these leaves that have a large leaf piece that will be in Philly. These were all wet, needle felted and then wet felted. And then I also use stitching. I have a sewing machine here. I think you can see you can see it on the back probably better, that I went back and forth with embroidery thread on the machine to give it a little bit more interest. And then again, I put acrylic gel medium on it to kind of stiffen them, because all of my work with felt work, I mean, you think about a piece of felt, you could wrap it around your neck, but if you want to have it on your wall, it can't just be that because it's too fluffy. It needs
Yeah.
something. So for me, the gel medium is like archival in fortifying the work. So does that kind of give you an
Certainly
overview?
gives a really good overview of your work. How do you think that your work has evolved over the years?
Well, it's evolved a lot as I've become more skillful. Um, just like with mixing paint, when I was painting, you know, you would see a color and it would be a mystery. How do you actually get that color? What colors do you mix together? Felting is very interesting that way because the raw wool from start to finish does not look the same. And I'm constantly surprised when I do my dotted felt that has, let's see, let me show you. A piece like this where it has little dots.
Mhm.
Uh, I'm constantly surprised by the colors that I combine because you're kind of rolling a core, you're rolling color around that, making tubes that I would lay then in amongst the felt and felt them in. So it's like biscotti, like you cut into it and then you have all these dots, but I never quite know. And it's very hard for me to replicate them too. Like I'll lay it out the same way twice, but I don't always get the same result twice.
Yeah.
Um, so it's interesting.
Do you have any pieces that you can show us that you're holding for the show to bring to the show?
Yes. So I just
And maybe while you're doing that, you could also talk about whether or not you do commission work and how someone might ask.
Yeah. So I did these two pieces that are based on tulip fields. These will be at the show. They're very bold and a little unusual for me. I don't do a lot in red. And I don't typically put a sun in the sky, but I just love the geometry of this, just the simple forms of them. And then I just posted this piece on my Instagram. This piece will be at the show. This is called Shuffle. And I'm super happy with this. I don't typically work in black and white, but I just felt I wanted to just kind of always pushing myself out of my own comfort zone. But of course, I still have to have color in the base. It can't just all be black and white. But it further really shows you the form of the top. Just keep it in black and white rather than the color being dominant. And what was the other thing?
Oh, the commission.
Oh yeah,
commission. Do you do commissions?
I do. So I do a lot of commission work. As you can see, I'm a little bit all over the place. Like I do landscapes, I do some figurative work, and I do that. I vary my work so much because it's so time consuming. So I don't want to get bored with what I'm doing. So I'll go from birds to marsh scenes to an abstract piece, and that keeps me happy, but it appeals to a wide range of people. And sometimes they'll see a piece and then it's gone and they're like, you did sunflowers. I didn't buy it when I was at the show, but I don't see them anymore. Would you do me a sunflower? So I recently did a sunflower commission. Or people will see a landscape and say, this reminds me of the scene at our lake house, and I would love you to interpret it. And so that happens quite often. So during the pandemic, commissions kept me very busy. I was super grateful for that because my own sense of inspiration was a little dulled. So it was good. It kind of got me inspired again. And I'm bursting with creativity because for a long time I wasn't. And now so much stuff is pouring out of me. I wish I had more time in my studio before the show because I'm super productive right now.
Well, on that note, we all look forward to seeing you at the show and to seeing some of your new pieces, especially your bird piece. So thank you very much for showing us how you put together this stuff. It's really quite spectacular. And I think people really have a greater appreciation for the effort and the time that you put into each piece that you do. So again, everyone, check out her booth at the show. Thanks a lot, Amy.
Thank you so much, Linda.